50 years ago, in the early hours of September 16, 1975, a crowd gathered in Port Moresby. The air was thick with anticipation, fear, and pride. As the Australian flag slowly descended and the new flag of Papua New Guinea rose against the night sky, thousands of people cheered, sang, and wept. For the first time in history, this diverse land of mountains, islands, and rainforests was united under one name. Papua New Guinea was free. But how did a country with more than 800 languages, countless tribes, and rugged, almost impassable terrain manage to forge a national identity and step into independence? The answer lies with a handful of men and women pioneers who dared to believe in something impossible. To understand their story, we must first step back to a time before independence, when Papua New Guinea was still administered by Australia. In the 1950s and 60s, the world was changing rapidly. Across Africa and Asia, colonies were throwing off the chains of empire. Yet in Papua New Guinea, many foreign officials believed independence would not be possible for another century. They argued the people were too diverse, too divided, too unprepared. But the pioneers of PNG thought differently. Among them was a young man from East Sepik, once a teacher and later a broadcaster, Michael Somare. To the people of his province, he was known as Sana, a traditional peacemaker. In politics, he became the voice of unity. Somare was not a man who shouted. Instead, he listened, he learned, and he carried with him the quiet conviction that Papua New Guineans could govern themselves. In 1967, Somare helped found the Pangu Party, a political movement that would soon become the spearhead of the independence cause. Pangu's rallies stirred excitement across the country. People who had never imagined themselves citizens of a nation began to dream of what freedom could mean. Somare was joined by others who carried their own fire for the future. There was John Guise, the wise and respected leader from Milne Bay, who would later become the nation's first Governor-General. Guise had a gift for bridging tradition and modern politics. He knew how to speak to villagers in their own language, and to foreign leaders in theirs. When doubts were raised about PNG's ability to stand alone, Guise firmly declared, "We are ready." Then there was Albert Maori Kinki, a medical assistant turned politician, whose fiery speeches lit up Parliament. Kinki had written one of the first autobiographies by a Papua New Guinean, 10,000 Years in a Lifetime, a book that revealed to the world the depth of the country's culture and the urgency of its future. His passion was unshakable. Independence was not just a dream, it was a necessity. Another critical figure was John Momis, a Catholic priest from Bougainville. Though quiet and thoughtful, Momis became one of the architects of the nation's constitution. His vision was to create a democracy that respected the diversity of its people, while binding them together under a common law. For Momis, the Constitution was not just a document, but a shield to protect future generations. And of course Julius Chan, a businessman from New Ireland, who brought an economic lens to the independence struggle. Chan's sharp mind for finance and politics helped lay the groundwork for an economy that could sustain itself beyond Australian aid. Together, these pioneers faced enormous obstacles. There were tensions between tribes, provinces that considered breaking away, and skeptics abroad who thought the country would collapse within a few years. Even among Papua New Guineans, there was uncertainty. Many feared independence would mean chaos. Others wondered if the nation would be dominated by a few powerful provinces, while smaller voices were drowned out. Yet the pioneers pressed forward. They traveled across the country, from remote villages in the highlands to island communities in the Bismarck Sea, speaking not of divisions but of unity. Their message was simple but powerful. Though we are many, we can be one. Finally, in 1973, Papua New Guinea gained self-government, with Michael Somare as chief minister. It was a testing ground for full independence. For 2 years, the pioneers worked tirelessly to prove the skeptics wrong. They built institutions, trained civil servants, and prepared the nation for the leap. And then, in 1975, that leap came. On Independence Night, John Guy stood before the crowd and declared, "Papua New Guinea is now ready to take her place among the independent nations of the world." When the flag rose, tears streamed down the faces of young and old alike. For the first time, the people of this land, from the highlands to the islands, were united by a single symbol, the bird of paradise soaring against the stars. But independence was not a finish line. It was the starting point of a new and difficult journey. In the decades that followed, Papua New Guinea faced corruption, tribal conflicts, economic instability, and the Bougainville crisis. These challenges tested the vision of the pioneers. And yet, through every trial, the spirit of independence endured. The foundations they laid, the Constitution, the institutions, the belief in unity carried the nation forward. Today, as Papua New Guinea marks 50 years of independence, the names of those pioneers remain etched in memory. Michael Somare, the father of the nation. John Guise, the guiding elder. Albert Maori Kiki, the firebrand. John Momus, the architect. Julius Chan, the strategist. And many others, politicians, students, church leaders, villagers, whose courage gave birth to a nation. Their legacy is more than history. It is a challenge to every Papua New Guinean alive today. They dreamed of a country where diversity is strength, where the land's immense wealth serves the people, and where the bird of paradise flies high in unity. That dream is not finished. It lives on, waiting for the next generation of pioneers to carry it forward. 50 years on, the world still watches Papua New Guinea. The question is no longer whether independence was possible. The question now is, what will the next 50 years bring?